Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lights Too Bright podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce a relatively new friend in terms of optometry, in that we've only probably known each other for about 2 years, probably from OSI and things like that. Fantastic journey, something that I think will be interesting to a lot of you. I'd like to introduce Purvi Thompson. Hi, Purvi.
Hi, thanks, Kara. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Excited to be here.
Yeah, that's because you haven't heard it. That's because you haven't been through it yet. That excitement's going to drain away pretty quick. Brian had to be on. Brian had to be on the booze to get him through 30 minutes of talking to me
You didn't tell me that was a
about growth.
prerequisite. I would have definitely agreed to that.
Maybe later in the day, we'll do like an after hours proper chilled out session. Get a few of us. That'll be quite interesting. So Purvi, I've not said anything intentionally in terms of your intro, mainly because I don't really know that much about your role. I know you work where you work now. I know you do some lecturing, and you've kind of stepped away from what I think a lot of people think is regular optometry, eye exams, refractions, spectacles, contact lenses kind of thing. So, so what do you do? What is your current role?
So, my current role is I'm head of optometry at OCL Vision. And it's interesting, Kerry, that you mentioned I've stepped out of the world of eye exams and refractions. Actually, a bulk of my work is eye exams and refractions, but just in a very different context, actually. So I
Okay.
think I think you're very right in saying that. And within optometry, I think working in a field where I do is probably the closest you might get to what we classify normal optometry. Although what is normal
Yep.
optometry, right? We're all doing very special things wherever we see our patients. So what I do generally now is OCL Vision is a private healthcare company. We do all forms of ophthalmology. So front of the eye, back of the eye, everything you can think of. The team that I work within and I lead so we deal with the front of the eye. So anything to do with laser, cataract, corneal grafts,
Okay.
lens exchange, laser vision correction, everything to do with that. So the bulk
Yep.
of my day is working with consultants, but doing the preoperative stage, which is very much a very definite history and symptoms, which we all do. A very clear refraction. Most of the time, we treat on that refractions for laser
Right.
and ICL patients. And then we do all the post-ops. So it's more clinical work, but with a massive focus on refraction too.
Okay. I think sometimes, particularly with the emphasis on IP, the refraction has almost become a second class citizen in some areas. And I do think that people really underestimate how important it is.
You're so right there. One thing in high street optometry is I didn't really enjoy the refractions. It just becomes very much a part of your routine, right? You see it as a routine. And that's
Yep.
why I think as optometrists, we may find it the least exciting part of our day because it is just a routine part. We do it for everybody, whether they need glasses or not. However, where I work now, it's the most important part of my day. And I see it in such a different manner. I don't just see it as somebody's a +3, someone's a -2. It's like, right, what are we going to do with this -2 patient? What are we going to do to change their life? How are we going to make their life better? And actually, if they're a 50-year-old -2 patient, what are we not going to do surgically to make their life worse? So you think about refraction in
Yep.
such a completely different context, which makes it a really exciting part of that eye exam. And actually, if we did that in high street, and that's what we should be doing, and I hate saying high street, actually, it's not a high street, in our clinic, wherever we practice, that's
Yep.
probably how we should see refraction is what are we doing to this patient to make them enjoy their vision in a better way?
Yep.
We just get to work with a team where the surgeons do it surgically and patients are delighted.
Yep. I think that's really important, and it's a good message to take away. So now we know where you work. I'm just curious, where is home? Where did you grow up?
So I was born and bred in northeast London. So if
Okay.
anyone knows South Woodford, that's where I was born and raised. And my dad is an optometrist. So
Okay.
like any household, my dad, my uncle had three practices between them. And when the receptionist was off I would go to help my dad as a receptionist, to sit there on the front desk to make sure no one was stealing the glasses. So I used to spend many a summer holidays, every school holiday there with my dad. And he was a brilliant optometrist. And I say that at the time I never understood it. And now I
Yep.
am where I am now, and I look back to what a fantastic optometrist he was. He loved the clinical aspect, so it was his own business, right? Optometry was different in those days. I think perhaps the value of optometry was a little bit more in those days. Things have
Yep.
changed a little bit recently, but clinically he was sound. The first, one of the first people to get the fundus camera in his practice, so he was really up to date with his
Amazing.
tech. So I
Yeah.
loved it, and so I was exposed to it at a really young age. I didn't want to do
Okay.
optometry. I actually wanted to do medicine. So I really
Okay.
wanted to do pediatrics. That was what I was going to do. And we have quite a few doctors in the family, and they all said to me, Purvi, being a medic is really hard work. You won't get the work-life balance you want. I know you want a family. I know you love kids. If you become a pediatrician, it's going to be really hard work, and you won't have that home balance. And I
Okay.
listened. And
Fair
I
enough.
didn't do medicine, and I regretted it for a long time, actually. I did
Okay.
optometry, did the degree, started working, and I toyed with the idea of going back to university to do medicine. Even after I got married, my husband said to me, why don't you just go back to university and do medicine? You really want to do it. And I kept
Yeah.
thinking, oh, it's too late. At 25, I thought it was too late. At 30, I thought it was too late. And it's ridiculous. I'm now 43. Had I done this 20 years ago? But now, actually, I'm so glad I didn't. I absolutely love the job I do. But that's my
That's the
organ.
journey.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
journey.
I think so. So it's really interesting. So I don't know if you know, I did some time in the States because I was going to emigrate, and then I tried to qualify. Basically, I've done the optometry degree twice,
Yeah.
just in two different countries. And then I came back, and then I got my first hospital job. And as I was leaving, the consultant, possibly one of the nicest things a consultant could say to me was like, "Have you ever thought about doing medicine?" Because I enjoyed the medical aspect of
Yeah.
optometry. I really, really do. And I was quite touched by that, to be honest. I was like, that means that consultant felt that I had what it takes to potentially make it in that field. But again, at that time, I'd done 2 degrees. I lived away. I came back. I was done. I was like, no, I'm not going back to do 5, because then you can do the accelerated 4-year medicine. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, no, thanks.
Do you know what's
I'm
interesting,
good with
Care,
that.
is I don't know whether I wanted to do medicine or maybe you did because you love a subject so much, you want to be the best possible. So as optometrist, you think, how do I become the best at this? I could do ophthalmology. That's the best thing you could be. Then you're making the decisions. Actually, that's so wrong. As an
Yeah,
optometrist, we can be the best possible optometrists we can be. And that's how I really learned to love what I do. It's just fulfilling that potential within a role. So I've done all of it. I started out in High Street, so I was in Specsavers in a
where did you
multiple.
go to uni? Sorry,
I know.
let's go
It's
back a
moving
bit.
forward. I went to Aston University, year of
Okay.
2000.
Okay, so you graduate. So you were just a year behind me, because I was, as in graduating class.
No, I graduated in 2003. I'm a
Okay,
lot
so you're a
younger
few
than
years.
you.
Yeah,
I'm a
few
lot
years
younger
behind
than you,
me.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I graduated in 2003 and I did my pre-reg
Okay,
in Specsavers, at a Specsavers.
okay,
And then I worked in Specsavers for a couple of years after that, and I did
right.
some locuming. And then my uncle retired, so he had a practice in Harringay,
Okay,
generally a very NHS area by then. And he said to me he was going to close the practice. So I said, why don't I run it for you? So I took over that practice. It was just myself testing and a receptionist. So I did all the testing, contact lenses, dispensing. And I was there for a good few years actually. And I didn't love it. I think I was young. I was in
yeah,
my late 20s, so I didn't have the clinical experience that I do now. And I didn't have the headspace for a business. I don't think I really understood it.
okay,
I enjoyed the learning. I enjoyed the aspect of it, but I was younger. I think I was probably a
yeah.
bit more mature. I didn't quite understand how to really develop it. And so I find it quite monotonous. I'd go there, I'd do my routine, I'd come home, I didn't think outside the box. I didn't think, I did go into schools, go into the local schools, telling them
Yeah.
how to do, why we should get eyes tested, things like that. And I just didn't enjoy it. And it was a chance meeting on a tube. I was going home one day and I bumped into a lady, a lot of you must know her, Elaine Lucas. She's a brilliant optometrist, orthoptist.
Graduate with me.
Yeah, she was actually my dad's pre-reg. So I knew
Oh,
Elaine when I was
she was in my
little.
class.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I bumped into her and she said to me, "Oh, Purvi, I know your dad's been telling me you're not loving optometry." I don't think I'd even told my dad I didn't love optometry. I wonder if he just saw I wasn't loving it.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm actually leaving a role. You would love it. I'm throwing you completely in the deep end here, but I think you should do it, and I think you'd enjoy it. And it was a place called Arna Eye Associates, so working with a surgeon called Richard Packard, who anyone in the field of ophthalmology knows he is, you know, a fantastic ophthalmologist and did a lot for the world of ophthalmology here, especially with phaco. And that was my first job in clinical optometry. Can you imagine going from high street to routine eye exams? So I didn't even do gas permeable contact lenses, very, very rarely. I did mainly soft lenses, not RGPs. I had a few patients that were on them, and so I could kind of muddle my way through those. And then I went to clinical optometry, and to be thrown into the deep end is an understatement, Kay, honestly. It was just, it was a whole whirlwind. One of my first days when Richard said to me, Purvi, this patient needs an IOL calculation for a toric lens going into their eye. They've had previous laser vision correction. Can you calculate the lens? I was like, what's an IOL? You know, at that point, I was like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know. And it was a whole about, you know, it was such a steep learning curve. But sometimes you learn the most when you're in those situations. Luckily, I had people around me. I had an optom who was there for a short time before he left, who supported me. But yeah, it was difficult. Then I had the manager saying, Purvi, we need to do immersion ultrasound for this patient, you know, and it was when you fill this little cup with water, put it on the eye and do ultrasound to work out the axial length. And it was things like this that I was thrown into, loosely taught, but gosh, what a great learning experience for me. I learned how to scan, I learned about optometry, you know, learning on these machines, and that's how I learned. And I was there for a good few years, actually. It was probably the hardest job I've ever done.
Okay. So biggest learning curve?
Yeah, and definitely the hardest job I've ever done.
Harder than pre-reg in terms of learning curve?
Yeah, it was. I think with pre-reg you have so much support around you, and you do.
Depends where you did your pre-reg.
You know, I think we do, and it's, you know, I know the pre-reg now is very different, but I felt then it was, you think it's a huge learning curve, but actually when we come out of university, we know way more than we think we do, and we just need to get the practice in, right?
Yeah, totally.
But this was a whole new ball game to me, and it was a challenge, a great challenge. And I wouldn't be where I was now without that job, because on that job I met a chap called Ali Mirza.
Right.
And I used to work with him once every couple of weeks. He used to come in. He used to use the space in Arnott's, work with Arnott's, and that's where I met Ali Mirza. And that was it. And actually, I then took a bit of a break. I had a baby.
Congratulations.
And after I had my baby, I unfortunately, you obviously know, but some people might not know, I got quite sick. I got cancer and had treatment that lasted for about a year, which coincided with my maternity leave.
Yeah.
And then realised after that I desperately needed a job because we were broke. So went up to work pretty soon after that, and I contacted Ali saying, so I used to go to my dad's practice just to do a couple of days a week to help him out. And then I said to Ali, I'm looking for a job. I decided not to go back to Arnott's. I think I just felt I needed a new start somewhere else. It was a great job, time to move on. And I said to Ali, I'm looking for a job. If you know anybody who needs an optometrist, you've worked with me a few times, hopefully you think I'm a decent optometrist, and I'm out there looking again. And he emailed me that day saying, why don't you come and work with me? Because I need an optom. Come and work with me. And I started a week later, believe it or not. You know, I was thinking I'd go back to work in a few months. You know, it was scary. Taking time off work, having a child once, I think is difficult, right? You lose your sense of self. It's all about being pregnant, having a baby, raising a child, and you do definitely lose that sense of self. Well, I certainly did.
Yep.
And then obviously I was a bit poorly, so you kind of lose your sense of self a little bit more. So going out, you know, come next week was okay, let's do this. And I stepped out of Bond Street Station actually, and I cried. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, here we go. And anyway, on that day there, I started working with Ali, and I met Mr. Barsam, Alon Barsam, who was also working with Ali. And Alon said to me, oh, Purvi, do you fancy doing a couple of clinics for me as well? So what was meant to be half a session a week, very quickly turned into 3 days a week within a month. And that's where I met Alon and Ali, and they then subsequently opened up what we all know now is the incredible OCL Vision. And when they did, they took me along with them, where I was an optometrist. There were two of us. And and there were 3 directors at that point. We were one clinic in New Cavendish
Yeah.
Street, and we've just grown and grown and grown. And my journey at OCL has been incredible, and I feel incredibly lucky, Carol, really lucky to have been on that journey with them and have this role now.
I think so. I'm just going to quickly touch about OCL because we're talking about it,
Okay.
and I feel we can give them a shout out because we can talk about whatever we want. So you guys are what, 3 sites now?
We are 3
Yeah.
sites.
So that's
And
what's North London.
yeah, we're in Kensington, New
Yeah.
Cavendish Street, and L Street.
Yeah.
And as you probably recently heard, it was big news that we have now got investment.
Yep.
So we are a business of a size that we are definitely worthy investing in. And so we are going to be expanding and growing. So hopefully accruing more sites, accruing
Yep.
new ophthalmologists, more talent. So there's always going to be scope to get a great team on board. And we've got great backing, and our plans are very exciting to say the least. So what
That's
these
amazing.
directors have created is unbelievable. To get 3 ophthalmologists all in the same field to come together. Look, we know ophthalmologists and what they're like, right? Refractive ophthalmologists also have their own little nuances.
Quirks.
Yeah, exactly. We'll call it what we do. But to get 3 of them together and have a vision and create a business. Then Chen Wong came on very subsequently, quite soon after that. I mean, this was all led by, there was 4 of them, plus we had Juliet, a lady that kind of brought them all together. And it was really the 3 of them, Juliet, and then Chen came on. And they just created this business, but they worked so well, and they've just grown it to be a fantastic ophthalmology healthcare setting. Like it's,
Fantastic.
the standard
That's
of
awesome.
care, the excellence, the team we have, our ethos, our culture, and our values. It is so inbred, it's so inbuilt and strong within OCL that, excellence is just there, and it's great. Now we do everything. We do back of the eye, front of the eye. We've got aesthetics. We've got oculoplastics. We recently brought aboard Emil Grunewan, also Mohammed Habadi. I don't know if you follow him on Insta, Kayo, but he is the eye doctor.
Yes, yeah, I do follow him. We've messaged here. We message here and there, and that's actually how I knew you guys were kind of expanding, because he posted, and an aesthetics lady who I can't remember her name, so I apologize. She posted as well. So you guys, OCL did their announcement stuff. So that's how I know you're getting bigger, and I knew you had the 3 sites, and that's how I've kind of been following your expansion in terms of services.
Yeah.
So but it's really interesting, because I think, and I've said this before and I'll probably say it again, I think sometimes when we are at uni, we don't quite understand the scope of what we are able to do once we are outside of uni, because a lot of people's exposure, I would say, and I'm going to be wrong in your case because your exposure came predominantly from family, but a lot of other people's exposure is going to come from what we, lovingly refer to as corporate optometry.
Yeah.
Right. So the high street corporate that's a lot of people's experience, and part of the reason for doing the podcast was to introduce my friends, people who I know will be honest, and just say, this is what I did, this is my journey. I started with Brian because Brian is still the most passionate optometrist I know. And, he's been practicing a long time. And he's still so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, let's share that. And then let's share other people who are passionate about it, but in different ways, or have gone about different routes to get where they are. And so that's why your name came up.
Sorry, Cara, I didn't mean to interrupt. Do you know what's so exciting is there are so many different routes now in optometry.
Yeah.
And things have changed. And I think that's for the new cohort or the young optoms out there, or even at any age. There are so many different avenues you can take. And just because you feel you're doing one, you're not stuck there. You can, you can branch out and say, well, I'm going to throw myself in the deep end. I'm going to go and do this. Do you know, I never thought I was good enough for hospital optometry. I remember thinking when I came out and I was doing my pre-reg and I was working, I'd love to be in that hospital. I'd love to go to hospital. I'm not smart enough, or I can't. I'm not clinical enough. I don't know enough about that, and that's why I never applied to hospital optometry. I never applied for that job because I didn't think I had enough. One, I didn't have enough experience with it because I'd never done it. And 2, you'd always need experience to get a job like that. and because I hadn't been exposed to it, there's no chance. How ridiculous.
I think it's crazy because actually a lot of hospitals, you don't need much experience. If you're going in at kind of
Yeah,
that entry level stuff, you don't need much experience, and they'll teach you what they need to teach you. So, I mean, just listening to your journey about Arnott, that is kind of, for me, that was a bit like a couple of other roles that I had. But for me, that's when you learn, and that's like, well, like, actually, I can do this. So initially it seemed hard. Initially it was like, oh God. But if you're motivated enough and you want to learn it, right, you've got to want to progress and you've got to want to learn it. Then it's like, well, I have a skill set now that maybe no one else in my profession has, because how many optometrists really now are doing immersion ultrasounds? Not
yeah.
many. Not
We
not
don't need
many at
to,
all.
luckily, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly. It's true that all these little skill sets that you gather help because it gives you a sense of I can do this if I want to do it, and if I can't do it, I'll learn. If I get it wrong, if I get it wrong the first time, that's okay. I'll just repeat it. You
yeah.
know, you have to start somewhere, and if you work within a good team that knows you have to start somewhere, like that's the best thing.
I think that really helps. I think you can be blessed if you end up working with people you enjoy working with. I think that's really important. The thing that I find, and I'm just going to circle back to it because you mentioned it early in your story, was that you'd met Ali, and then you'd worked with Ali, and then you reached out to Ali, and that's kind of how your OCL journey,
Yeah,
right at the beginning of your OCL journey. But how important would you say it is to kind of make contacts and build relationships within the industry? So like going to things like OSI where we met
yeah,
like properly. I sometimes think that some of the younger professionals don't quite appreciate what they're going to get from that beyond just the education element of it. It's just potential. I've done a podcast with Karen Walsh. I don't know if you know Karen. She works for Cooper now, but she used to
yeah,
be here. And she spoke about, if you're open to opportunity, just meeting these people, just sometimes it just happens. You're kind of sitting there having a chat, and one minute you're sitting on a train, you know, going to refract. The next minute you're head of optometric services, a blossoming ophthalmology provider. But it comes from being open to making contacts.
Do you know, Kerry, it's funny you just summarised that journey for me, but to me, it doesn't seem like it's a huge step. It just seems like a journey, like a path I've
Yep.
taken.
Yeah.
So, although you say head of optometry at OCL Vision, actually that does sound really good, doesn't it? Like it really does
Yeah.
sound good.
Yeah.
But to me, it's me. It's a job I've done, and it's a path I've taken over years to get me there. None of it has felt, oh my goodness, I'm stepping up. Oh my god, this is a big step up. It's just been a really organic path I've taken. And you're right. Had I not been at Arnott's, had I not met Ali, who used to come in every other week, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have this role because I never would have reached out to him. Networking is so underrated. Look, as optometrists, we love people, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't stick ourselves in a room for
Yeah.
half an hour, just me and another person speaking for half an hour. Right? I often say we're optometrists, stroke counsellors. How many times do we sit there and we listen to not a story about the eyes, but about their life, right? We have to love people. That has to come
Yes.
with it.
Yep.
And networking is one, you get to talk to people, you get to see other people's journeys, you learn things as well. Oh, you're doing this in clinic, oh, can I do that? Oh, that's interesting, I'd quite like to do that. Or you see people doing other things. So from then I got to speak at events. Alon, years ago when I first started working with him, saying, Puri, I'm going to take to J&J, there's a group of ophthalmologists there, can you teach them about aftercare? I was
Yeah.
like, me? I'm an optometrist. You want me to teach eye surgeons about aftercare? And he said, yes, a lot of these surgeons won't understand premium lenses like you do. This was years ago, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
must have been years ago, 10 years ago. They won't understand premium eyeballs like you do, or the aftercare, the advice you give, or the refraction, what the refraction means. I thought, my gosh, this is ridiculous. But I stood there. It was a terrible talk, I'm sure, right? It was the first one I'd done. I'm probably rubbish. But I did it.
Can't
I
be
thought,
that bad. People keep calling you back.
Oh yeah, they
So,
didn't. Actually, maybe it was pretty poor. But I did that one, and then I was like, right, I can give a talk, and then you just start doing little things. You meet
yep,
people, and I met Ross. You know Ross, who was at the Body Doctor at the time,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah,
And Ross was like, oh, Purvi, can you do a talk for the Body Doctor? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this actually. And
yeah,
and then I work with Raina through OCL. They're like, oh, could you talk about cream on my oils? You see all the aftercares. You know what
yeah,
patients are saying. Do you mind educating on this? And it just goes from there. You might feel I feel really uncomfortable still. But I don't love standing up and speaking. Well, actually, maybe I do. I love doing it. I don't like the feeling I get before I do it.
yeah,
Right? You're always
yeah, yeah,
nervous. You have that feeling of, is this going to be good? Am I going to be good? Am I going to be engaging? Are the audience going to listen to what I say? But it's great. But networking, had
yep,
I not met people, they never would have realised what I do every day. You never would have had me to do this podcast because we wouldn't have met. You wouldn't have
yep,
asked me, what do you do in your role? Oh, that's different.
yep,
So definitely networking, going to these conferences, and I love it.
yeah. Optometry is a very small world, and for the most part, most colleagues are quite nice to each other.
Yeah,
So if someone reaches out to someone, I've reached out to you, I've reached out to other people, and just asked them a question, they'll quite happily answer it. Or
yeah,
if you're like, if you'll build a good relationship with someone, and you can say, look, I'm not career wise, wherever you may be, um, you don't know who can maybe go, well, actually, I know a role that's come up through something else. Why don't you do that? I remember speaking to a lady. I don't want to drop her name because a few years ago she was an optometrist. She'd had kind of these brief discussions about professional services. Spoke to me, and I was just I was just kind of honest about it. I mean, if you want to step away from a consulting room, it's a great way to stay in the industry. And now has made a couple of steps, and he's doing really well in the like professional services, education, patient education sphere of optometry. But it comes from just asking, because I think a lot of optometrists are quite happy to help. I don't
definitely.
think we really see each other as competition. We're just trying to help each other to
Yeah.
progress, and be better clinicians,
Do you know what? You
which
could have
I
a
think
clinic
is
right
important.
next door to you, and actually, I think you do champion each other, right? We're not. It is. There is no competition. It's you need your business to succeed wherever you are.
Yeah,
Without business, we can't get the jobs. We do what we do. But there definitely is an element of championing each other, especially as optometrists. I really do feel that as a niche, we really do bring each other up, and we have to, because let's be honest, that no one else is really bringing optometry up. I think it is down to us to really show
yep,
show people what we do, what we're about, the skills we have, and now becoming more clinical with the IP. I mean, it's all great, all things to elevate optometry as a whole, because it was really highly valued at one point. Even my dad was doing it. It was a really highly valued profession, right? The public valued what we do, and it took a dip. Definitely took a dip in people's perception of what we do. We're
yeah,
just there to sell glasses. And it's a shame. Well, we need to make our business work, because without us selling frames, we wouldn't have a business. We can't then test your eyes. Unfortunately, perhaps the bodies aren't doing enough to increase the fees as they should be. But the professional fees now is where it should be, and that's what we're doing. But we do need to
yeah,
highlight the profession. I think that's where optometry is coming together. Big people are coming together to say, let's elevate what we do.
yep. That is fantastic, and I think that's a great place to kind of park this now, because we're about to hit 30 minutes. So, last question. I ask this question to everyone. Um, for those who have taken the time to listen, to watch on YouTube, or listen on Spotify, you can like and subscribe, if you want. There will be more episodes. What one piece of advice would you give them, Purvi? And that can be career wise, that can be outside of life. You've had some downs, as well as some ups. So I'm sure you've got something interesting to share.
Well, that's a really deep and profound question. And I do, and I think about this a lot, because as people know, I don't know if you know, I've got two young girls, right? So I'm always
Yeah,
trying to give them lessons is, don't say no. Just say yes to any opportunity you get that you might want to do, even if you think you are not qualified to do it, that you do not have the skill set to do it. Say yes and then learn, right?
yeah,
That's all you can do, because
yeah, yeah,
if you say no, you've not even given yourself the opportunity to learn. There's no point saying no, learning, and then asking, is that chance there? Say yes, and then do everything you can to learn to make that role work for you. Someone's asked you for a reason. Believe in yourself. They've asked you because they think you're qualified. Whether you feel you're qualified or not is one thing, but someone's asked you because they think you are. So if they've got that belief in you, you've got to believe in yourself. And you know
That
what?
is,
Sometimes we will fail, but
yeah,
we will always
that's a
succeed. Yes.
perfect place to cut off. So I'm just going to thank you, and thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy, you've got kids, and you have to go to work and all these other things. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to stop recording now.